Loki's 6-episode Season 1 has come to an end, and it's been a lot of fun covering it in these videos that I post after each episode, so it's been a great time. I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the show so far quite a lot, and this was the big finale, the big climax, answers all the questions, and I definitely have some thoughts on it. I'll put it like that. Definitely have some thoughts. But as usual, spoilers for this episode, spoilers for the whole show, obviously, and let's just talk about the finale. For this episode, I'll just go through my notes in chronological order, because I feel like that kind of works for the structure of this episode. Opening of the episode, I really loved the intro. It was a fun MCU way of establishing the master timeline with Steve and Peggy's song and all the quotes from these different MCU films, and presumably other stuff as well. I didn't catch everything on my first watch through that just happened. And the visual effects are amazing in that scene, and this space set. The visual effects and sets and everything throughout the episode are great. But I really enjoyed that. That really got me hyped for this epic timeline reveal finale. And I was just super excited going into this episode. Maybe that led to some of my disappointment with it, which we'll talk about. That I was so excited to see, not entirely just to see what would be revealed, but just excited for the big finale. And yeah, going into this, super pumped. The Miss Minutes jump scare, could have done without that. Watching this first thing in the morning when I woke up. Still pretty tired, sitting here looking at my computer, and then boom, terrifying Slenderman. Loki also does literally say the phrase, "we write our own destiny," which I've sort of mentioned that I was hoping they wouldn't directly say the theme of the show, but whatever. One that most people also predicted is that Kang was behind it all. Kang the Conqueror. I guess this one isn't necessarily the Conqueror. This one was Kang the chill dude. Not so chill, actually. Kind of insane, weird dude. But Kang the nice one. Not a blue man, although I think we will get that in the future with the variants that he talks about, which I think will be the villains going forward. It's his evil variants, and as we saw with the Loki variants, where one is a giant armed monster and one is a cyclist. They can be different things. But, yeah, let's talk about Kang, because I really did not like this performance, personally. I don't blame Jonathan Majors necessarily. It's a bit like a Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor situation. Not really in the sense of how the character acts, although there are a couple of similarities. But more, I think this is what he was told to do. I think this is exactly what the director told him to do, but either he doesn't fit that kind of character, or the writing didn't really work. But I found this performance quite cringy and irritating and forced. That's the word I think of. Very, very forced. His speech patterns, his over-the-top hand movements, I get that they were going for, the end of time and this crazy, powerful, godlike being is then this, super casual, weird dude, and it's not the timekeepers who were these gods. And I'm fine with that. I think that would be kind of weird if we had the giant, timekeeper god fake-out reveal, and then it was just another giant god being Titan thing. But the way they did this, it felt so much like they were trying to make a funny, weird, over-the-top, strange character, jokey kind of thing, and it just didn't work at all. I found it weird and irritating. It wasn't a Jim Carrey performance, but it was it felt kind of like a character that Keegan-Michael Key would play in a Key and Peele skit. It so didn't fit the show weirdly. I know the show is really weird and goofy, but it was a completely different kind of weird and goofy, especially for this part of the show, this big climax. And it doesn't have to do with, they ruined Kang the Conqueror, this character, how people got upset with the Mandarin, which I like the Mandarin twist. It's not that, I've read minimal comics with Kang, one or two, so I'm not super attached to that character. And also, it's not the Kang that we're gonna see, he was one variant, and I think Jonathan Majors is gonna be playing either lots of them or one specific really bad one in the future. It's not that, it was just for this, I guess we'll never see this guy again, this version, which, by the way, good, in my opinion. But just in this episode, especially because so much of it is taken up by him talking and him expositing about this stuff, and the performance not working for me at all meant that most of this episode didn't work for me at all, because a lot of it just hinges on him talking. And this episode, I know the last episode was quite action heavy and, exciting and weird and different. But considering this was the finale, there was a lot of talking and having these philosophical discussions and a lot of exposition. 50% of the episode felt like exposition. That, probably wasn't 50%, but it felt that way. And it's just a bit less interesting and less well done than earlier in the show, I feel. Because I'm not trying to say that I need, crazy explosions and colors and action for this to be exciting. That can definitely make it exciting, but it's not just because they're talking it's bad. The first 2 episodes I loved because of the philosophical discussions. The action was the stuff that, like, I was like, whatever. The stuff with Owen Wilson and Loki talking about his character, talking about our place, in the world, our destiny, that kind of stuff, it was interesting. Even episode 3, which everyone hated, and I do feel like they laid it on a little thick, I did find interesting a lot of the conversation that Loki and Sylvie were having. Here, though, now, it feels like it's kind of just what the show had going for it. Like, I guess it was it sort of feels like it was a one-trick pony. Like, they had this thing, and it was really good initially, and then they kind of just kept doing it where these, like, long, drawn-out discussions. It almost makes the show feel kind of low budget. Like, how a show will have episodes where, okay, they blew their budget on, like, these crazy effects, and now we just kind of have to have an episode where Walter White, hits a fly. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a great episode. But, like a bottle episode. Like, they just didn't have the budget to do anything. And I know it's not that, and I feel like it was intentional, but I guess it's especially, it's partly the writing, a bit more exposition-y and not as interesting, and a bit more one-dimensional, we'll talk about. And then also the Kang performance that I was not a fan of. It just felt dull and, like, not annoying, but I feel like I'm being really mean, but I was bored. I'll be honest. I was bored by this episode. I was waiting for it to finish, which I was really shocked by, because that hasn't happened with any of the other episodes. But I was like, I legit checked the time on the Disney Plus thing. I was like, okay, how much longer is this? Because it's not like the contents of what they were saying. It's just the execution of it. And ultimately, considering it was the big finale, it really didn't feel like it. Like, I know there's a big reveal, which we'll talk about, and there's big twists and everything, and we learn information, we get all the mysteries revealed. But in terms of just, like, the execution of it, it just felt kind of underwhelming. And the writing just felt worse. Like, characters felt more one note, and maybe I was just not in a good headspace, like, because I already wasn't enjoying the episode, so maybe I'm nitpicking a little. But I felt like Sylvie felt more one note. Like, she felt less like a real character, and just like she has this motivation, and like that's it. That's all there is to her. And I get that kind of works for her character. Like, it's not like it comes out of nowhere that she's like that, but it did feel less complex and more just like simple, and just not what a finale should feel. I feel like the finale should be like the culmination of everything, and it just felt like not that. Betrayal and the mistrust and all this stuff, and it's just, that whole part felt a bit contrived to me. Even though, again, it makes sense for a character, but the execution of it was just less subtle, I guess, than some of the stuff before on the show. Again, I get that Sylvie being blinded by revenge and anger makes sense for her character. That, like, Wikipedia line that you could read, like, Sylvie is blinded by her anger and want for revenge. But that basically feels like how the show does it, because Kang talks for so long, so there's not much time to build anything else to it, so it just feels like Sylvie was blinded by revenge. Like, that feels like that's how it was executed. We get a big, soppy character speech from, Loki to Sylvie, which, despite me being not annoyed, but, not really there for this episode at that point, was actually decent. I thought that was one of the better parts of the episode, because also this felt like more of a story progression and culmination of a character arc. It felt more like a finale moment. It worked as a culmination of everything that's been happening. I thought that was solid. And they share a kiss, still think it's a little strange, but I guess, stranger things happen in comics. The action, again, is, some of it is okay, and then it turns into badly edited and done action. Like, just the cuts. I mean, the stuff that I'm showing here, like, just the cuts were quite sloppy. For a show with such a big budget and production team and, Marvel behind it, it's just a little strange to see. Owen Wilson returns to the TVA. That's fun. He has it's always nice to see him in the show. That might have been the highlight of the episode for me, to be honest. They try to get you to feel sorry for Ravonna. Kind of works, sort of. She's still not great, but I mean, I guess you understand her motivation more clearly. And then she goes out there to presumably come back for the future, because that's, how MCU stuff works. Someone's like, I'm going to go off and explore, and then they show up in 2 years in some, like, Disney Plus show. Cool. There's a lot of stuff coming up from this that we'll talk about. A lot of stuff set up. Also, by the way, on Kang, I get that his mannerisms and the way he's acting is like, because he's also bored and, he wants to have some fun and savor it because he doesn't get too many visitors. But even with that, it was still bad. I don't know. I was not a fan. I mean, to be fair to Kang, the one thing that I did like about his character is that his motivation and his purpose he has a point, like saving everything from a multiverse war is like a good cause. But then also he does bad stuff, like basically forcing people to work in the TVA without their consent or knowledge and destroying timelines. So it's a good thing for an antagonist to have them not just be crazy and evil for no reason, but have them actually have a point and make sense despite doing bad things that need to be stopped. It makes it more complex, and I'll give them that. There was an element of that. And everything that was revealed was interesting and like satisfying, I suppose. Like it made sense in the show and we got answers to stuff. So again, I don't really have a problem with the contents of the conversation, just how it was done is what I had a problem with. And the real Kang in the future will be a variant of him, I'm guessing, or like the real Kang, like the Kang who's the villain, or maybe there'll be multiple of them, but whoever's going to be the next Thanos, it'll be a variant of Kang from another multiverse, I suppose. And now the timeline diverged, which I'm 99 to 100% sure will be how we set up all this multiverse stuff in the future. So Doctor Strange, how all the different Spider-Men are going to come in Spider-Man No Way Home. Maybe What If will, have an element of that in it. And also potentially maybe bring in the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, to explain, where mutants had been all this time, like we hadn't heard of them. It'd be kind of weird if they just showed up. So that could be done. And if they wanted to bring in previous characters like they're probably going to do with Spider-Man, this is a way to do it. And yeah, it really set up big stuff for the MCU, which is interesting that they did that in a TV show to set up basically like the future, what seems like the future for the entire universe. But I'm okay with that. I watched it. I feel like some people will not have watched it and who will go to see the movies, so they'll be a little confused. But, Marvel is so big now, and so also like all the properties are so referential to other properties, and at this point you kind of just have to keep up, or else you're gonna be lost. In terms of just that setup, it's a very cool moment. The impact was lessened a bit for me because I didn't really like the rest of the episode, but it is independently a very cool ending. It ends on a cliffhanger. Unlike the other MCU shows that were sort of more contained, that had, little things spinning off, but like were generally quite contained, this has huge ramifications for the future of the MCU. They weren't lying when they said the Disney Plus shows would have those, so fair play. So of course, all those other timelines have branched, which will lead into Multiverse of Madness, which will lead into this entire phase, I think, Quantumania probably, No Way Home, which can lead to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men in some way, whether they're new casts or maybe some of the old casts are brought over, who knows. There was mention of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, not mentioned, but like he posted stuff in his story, so who knows with Jackman, he's a sneaky boy. But in general, there is some explanation for bringing in new characters, whether newly cast and newly done or not. Probably newly done though, if I had to guess. And Kang will now be the big bad, the big Thanos-esque villain. And so I think we'll be seeing him in a lot of stuff. He's confirmed for Quantumania. He'll probably show up in a lot of things, I think, kind of like Thanos. I think he'll probably be in Multiverse of Madness, maybe in No Way Home. I think we'll be seeing a lot of that guy from now on. And I'm happy with that, if he's not like he was in this episode, because Jonathan Majors is probably a good actor. I can't remember what I've seen him in now, if I have seen him in stuff. But yeah, if he's not acting like that, then I'm all in for this, because Kang is a cool character in general. And Loki's stuck in the TVA, and I assume we'll be getting a season 2 of this since it ends on such a big cliffhanger. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff set up for the MCU, and I think all of this multiverse stuff will culminate in a big epic finale. It seems like they're really trying different stuff. We're going to be getting Marvel Netflix crossovers, supposedly, with Daredevil coming in. Going to be getting the different Spider-Men coming in and all the different multiverses. Who knows? Like Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, we could get other cameos. Never say never. And we're getting new properties. We're getting Eternals, Shang-Chi. We're getting new versions of other properties. Blade, Fantastic Four, X-Men. Clearly, there's also some Dark Avengers or, different Avengers thread going on with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That'll play into it, or maybe it'll be like kind of a, side story, like sort of how Hydra was to the Thanos story. And maybe the Young Avengers are also being built, although maybe that isn't like a specific storyline, but they're just putting the stuff out there for future use. Anyway, it was cool to see it set up. Great, crazy ending, as you can tell from that giant ramble. It has me thinking a lot about the future of this universe. After the whole Endgame thing, and that seemed like finality, it's cool to see that now we have the bricks laid for the next big thing, slowly. And I'm interested in it. It sounds really cool. Just was not a fan of this episode at all, personally. Okay, not at all. There was good stuff in it. But generally speaking, I definitely thought this was the worst episode of Loki. And overall thoughts on Loki, I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it the most of these. It's probably close with WandaVision. But yeah, I've sort of talked about the pros and cons in this video, and you've seen in my series, but I love the tone, world, atmosphere, goofiness, especially early on. I love the performances. I love when it kind of went out there a bit and when it was being creative. I thought quite a lot of the dialogue was good, especially early on. And then, yeah, my negatives, the ending, I didn't love. There are a few similarly long, drawn-out sort of conversation scenes. Some of them are great, and then some of them, seem a little, not forced, but fall a bit flat and seem almost there kind of for the sake of it. The action throughout generally wasn't very good. There are some standout moments, but just hand-to-hand stuff especially, the editing and the choreography I didn't think was particularly good. But overall, I did very much enjoy it. The pros definitely outweighed the cons. I don't know if I would rewatch it though. I think I enjoyed the general vibe of it more than the actual content, if that makes sense. Like, I did enjoy the content, but sort of, especially early on, like, I think of the music, I think of some of the visuals, and some of the goofy, weird, crazy stuff that happens. And I really enjoyed that tone. I think it fits so well for this character. The story, the Sylvie love story, yeah, there were some moments of dialogue there that weren't great either. That stuff was solid, but didn't stay with me as much as just like the general tone and fun that the show had at times, and the interesting concepts it brought up at times. And Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson's performances were both great. I mean, everyone's performances were great. Those are the two stand out to me. Sophia DiMartino was also great as Sylvie. Everyone was great. Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson stood out to me. Tom Hiddleston because he got to sort of ham it up as Loki again. Owen Wilson because, well, duh. And yeah, I think those are my thoughts on Loki. Good show. Definitely had some problems with it. I think in a few weeks when I've had more time to digest everything and think about it as a whole, I'll have a more clear picture of how I feel about it in comparison to other MCU properties. But yeah, I liked it overall quite a lot. Maybe my favorite Disney Plus show, though I'm going to give it a little bit of time before I decide that. Also, here's how I'd rank the episodes. So those are my thoughts on the finale of Loki. What did you think of it? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.